case you don't know who I am, so I began my sort of professional life here as a researcher looking at archaeology, public policy, and then had a broader research interest across heritage and museums and arts and culture, and worked at the Arts Council in their small in-house research team for a few years. Now I'm a freelancer. And I suppose what I do is I try and help arts and cultural organisations to use brain-achingly complicated social science to evaluate the success of the programmes that they run. And whenever I'm brought into a discussion about evaluation with a client, I start a stopwatch, because what I'm interested in is how long it takes for the conversation to turn from how do we measure what we've achieved to what were we trying to achieve? Because lack of clarity in that question is the thing that drags down every conversation about evaluation. And it's fair to say there is no right or wrong way, or no predetermined factors that will determine whether you've had a successful crowdfunding or crowdsourcing project. It's for every project to determine the terms of its own success, and then bring evaluation experts in, or if you're lucky enough to have the expertise in-house, to then start to test whether or not you are achieving the goals that you have set for yourself. So that's the kind of core message I want to share with you, and I'm going to use the next 7 minutes or so just to kind of run through a bit. But you've heard the key sort of observation of mine. So what is it that crowdsourcing or crowdfunding things are trying to achieve? I think crowdfunding is quite a more straightforward metric of success or otherwise. Okay, you meet your target, you succeeded. Doesn't matter like how you got there, doesn't matter what people's experiences were. If that is your target, if that's your objective, there's a very clear determination. You have second order objectives around how people felt about it, what people's sense of reward was, what their subsequent activity or attitudes are as a result of their giving money. But you've got quite a clear distinction of success and failure. With crowdsourcing, I think it's far more complicated, and I think there's a greater basket of potential objectives you might have in your project. And we sort of talked about engagement as being sort of the end point of success here. But of course, engagement comes in many forms and in many magnitudes. So it might be around the breadth of engagement. You want to reach a wide number of people, and so your success measure relates to how many people you've engaged with. Or it might be about depth of engagement or quality of engagement. And then you're looking for other appropriate data points to collect to tell you about whether you're succeeding or not. And if it is about depth, it doesn't matter how many you reach, okay, it's all about the depth. Just be clear about what those distinctions are. Some of the presentations on the project shared with us lots of data about demographics or about the activity undertaken or the tasks achieved. And that's kind of, for me, that's absolutely kind of crucial, simple, baseline reporting and monitoring data. What's much more interesting to me as an evaluator and as a social scientist is what difference has your project made, either to the kind of scholarly realm in terms of new information or new insight, but also to the people participating. Has it changed their education levels? Has it changed their awareness? Has it changed their attitude? And it's investigating those kinds of changes that I think is most interesting, both in terms of social science, but I suspect also most interesting to sort of the high-level stakeholders in this realm, whether that's funding councils or universities or cultural organisations who have their own missions, which will probably align with projects that are about somehow behaviour change or attitude change. We heard from Megan about trying to find appropriate benchmarks, and I think that's something that is a real kind of first-order task for people engaged in crowd-based methods here, because given it's such a new and explosive and interesting way in which to reach people, there's not a clear understanding of what's an appropriate kind of benchmark to pick, whether that's for the number of people engaged or the type of engagement or the kind of tasks that you would want to undertake. And so what I want to kind of sum up by saying is conversations about evaluation frequently get bogged down in terms of data or methodology. That's the most boring kind of conversation to have, right? It's much more interesting to really interrogate to what is the point of doing the project you're doing, yeah? And taking this sort of more traditional kind of museums or libraries or archives kind of realm, museums don't, in this context, museums don't exist to preserve or present objects of historical cultural interest. That's the way in which they achieve their overall aims, yeah? Which might be an understanding of one's place in the world, or greater affinity with one's local community, or goodness knows what it might be. It doesn't, like I say, it doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong. It's just for each institution to set their own objectives. And so what's quite interesting in the discussion so far there's a risk of getting bogged down into this, collect this via this method and this via that. But I think the most important conversation to have, given what's so exciting about crowd-based methods, is to start to really use these discussions as a way to test and interrogate what the overall objectives and aims are of these projects.